Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of our Battle for Zendikar complete set review. We're going to talk all about the green cards today. I am Evan Irwin.
I'm Brad Nelson.
All day long, and we are going to start with Beastcaller Savant, a rare green and a colorless 1/1 with haste that adds one mana of any color to your mana pool. You spend this mana only to cast creature spells. Because of the way the mana is on, or the mana cost and the power and toughness, and it looks really bad. It is an elf shaman ally for what it's worth, but I'm pretty sure this card is actually very good.
Yeah, I actually think that it's very good as well. And it's one of the mana producers, so like it's going to be good and limited. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to see constructive play because it's what we've got, right? This and Rattleclaw Mystic.
Yeah.
And it's also acts kind of like a Llanowar Elves, any turn past turn 2.
Right.
Since it has haste, so it only costs 1 mana the turn you play it.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't actually seem that bad. So we'll see where it goes. We have some weird mana bases people can do. I feel like there are going to be Rhino and Ojutai and Dragonlord or Tarka decks. Like, you can just do whatever you want.
Sure.
Salumgar, like Dramoka, I don't really care. People are just going to cast whatever they want,
sure.
And this card's going to allow for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. Again, because like it's just like a 1/1 for 2 mana normally has to have all these amazing abilities, and this is a very good ability. I just don't know if it's good enough, but it just seems like it is, basically.
Yeah, and it is also just the dream guy, right? You know, he listens.
They come because I called. They stay because I listen.
Yeah.
Wow. He's turning on the charm, dude. The snake charm, if you will. Eh?
I don't get it.
Oh. Fine. Blister Pod is next. Blister Pod is a green 1/1 that has Devoid, and when it dies, you put a 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion creature token onto the battlefield that has sack it to add a mana. So a lot of people are really excited about this guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's the second coming of Doom Traveler. Doom Traveler saw a lot of constructive play. This card's going to do a lot of cool things. Just alone, like, there's just so many things you can do with it in a lot of unique ways. Like, I don't exactly know exactly what you can do, but you can do like Butcher, Husk shenanigans.
Sure.
It adds mana so it can like accelerate you in certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
It is a very unique card, and I think it'll see standard. It's not that great in limited. Like, I don't think it's that good because it is just a 1/1 that gives you a 1/1 sign, which is fine, but I don't feel like you're going to get that trade-off like you want. Like, maybe if you're black-green with Altar's Reap and a lot of those shenanigans.
Yeah, and you got Bone Splinters, which is good.
Yep.
So in black-green it seems really good, but otherwise it seems almost unplayable in limited.
Yeah, and its flavor text is the most National Geographic flavor text I've ever seen from a Magic card.
A Blister Pod's corpse is a Scion's cradle. That's adorable.
Yeah.
That's weird and adorable all at the same time. So, sure. Strange card. Cool, though. I love the fact that like people are getting so excited about this in Constructed. It's like, well, it's like Doom Traveler, but it's not, but because it gives you a mana, and that's really weird, but that's really exciting. So, like, that's sweet. I love it.
This is the Llanowar Elf we get. This is the Llanowar Elf we deserve.
Yes, it is. All right. We're going to move on to Brood Monitor, a 2 green, 4 colorless 3/3. So it's a 6 mana 3/3 that has Devoid, and when it enters the battlefield, you put 3 colorless Eldrazi Scion creature tokens on the battlefield, where they have sack and add a mana. So for 6 mana, you're getting 6 power across 4 guys. This card is awesome.
Yeah, this card is a limited bomb. I mean, Cloudgoat Ranger-esque effects are always great because it's dividing so much power and toughness, so you can't just kill the creature and move on.
Right.
It helps you ramp into Eldrazi. Like, this card gets you with a 7th land drop to 10 mana right away, all by itself, which is huge if we're trying to like ramp into Ulamogs or the Desolation Twins or whatever else.
Right.
So a very good mana accelerant and also a good beater.
Yeah, this card is just value up one side and down the other. I mean, like, it's not an aggro card. It's not meant to be. This is the ramp card. This is the go big strategy, and this is the card you want to see when you're in those types of decks.
Yeah.
Yeah, this card
pretty
is
awesome.
Fan-freaking-tastic. Brood Hunter Worm this is your bread and your butter, sir. A green and 3 colorless 4/3. The end.
I mean, this is the most generic bread and butter of all time. I mean, it's so boring. I'm already bored of it. I've never even cast it. I've never seen it in play, and it makes me yawn. It's just, this set is so exciting. It has so many cool things. I mean, it's a 4/3 for 4. Like, it's not even like There's other red creatures that are 4/3s for 4 with abilities. It makes no sense why this couldn't at least be a 4/4.
It's not an ally. It's just a worm. It's just a dork that does a thing.
Yeah. All right. Sure. Thanks for the 4/3 body.
Okay. Thanks. Bye. So I mean, it's on an aggro curve. If you want to turn things sideways, it's 4 power for 4 mana, which is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Next. Call the Saiyans is a green and 2 colorless sorcery which is devoid, and it puts 2/1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion creature tokens on the battlefield. That's what it does. That's all it does. It's a ramp spell that also makes dudes. And now that the Eldrazi Scions are here, and it's not Eldrazi, what were they before? Help me.
Eldrazi Spawn.
They're no longer Spawn. They are now Scions. This card is a lot more interesting as a result.
Yeah, and I mean, it does give you 2 power, which is great, and it can accelerate you. I feel like it's kind of this empty shell of a card, though, because, when you use it, you put it in your deck for mana, right? You're not putting it in for the 2/1/1s.
Right.
And once you use that mana, the card is now gone. So it's like card disadvantage. It's very Seething Song-esque sometimes, it's not as bad as a Seething Song because you can use the 2/1/1s for certain reasons.
Right.
But it feels underpowered, and I haven't seen it really have any high impact in a game. Yeah. Even if it's like using it as the double ramp spell.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, it's not Kodama's Reach. It almost feels like it's missing something, which is weird.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really make it much better than it already is. Like, you couldn't give them 3 tokens. You can't go, this card then would be able to cast a Tarka the next turn. So you can't really do that.
3 dudes.
Seriously. Yeah. This would have been a 3 dudes seriously moment. Yeah.
Yes, it would have been. But unfortunately, it is not. And as a result, it's kind of meh. And we're going to keep moving.
It's 2 dudes seriously.
It's 2 dudes. All right.
Yeah.
Sure. Earthen Arms. I like this card quite a bit. It's a green and a colorless sorcery that puts 2+1/+1 counters on target permanent. Any permanent you like. And then it awaken 4 for 7 mana. A green and 6 colorless. So this thing is good early. It's good late. The artwork is amazing of this dude.
Oh, it's the best artwork in the set.
Strapped to the land. I love it. This card is super cool. You could put those +1/+1 counters on the land that you're going to awaken. So all of a sudden you have a 6/6 for 7 mana, which again is fine and on curve for a green deck and whatnot. But the flexibility in the spell seems super powerful.
Yeah, this is the card that actually made me have the connection to the Eldrazi to Pacific Rim.
Nice.
Because I was like, I feel like somebody in design actually thought of that. Like, when they saw Pacific Rim, they're like, oh, these are the Eldrazi. And then it just stuck with them for 2 years.
Nice.
And finally, because these look like Pacific Rim monsters, and this looks like what were they called?
I don't know, the robots or whatever that fought them?
Yeah, Juggernauts.
Sure.
Were they? No, they weren't Juggernauts.
I can't remember.
Yeah, whatever they were.
They were the robots that people were put inside to smash on the invading kaiju, and this card is great.
Yeah, no, this card is really fun, and it just seems so unique that you can be like, I'm going to put 2+1/+1 counters on my Planeswalker because I can.
Yes.
Put them on. Yeah, I'll put them on my Silk Wrap.
Put it on my enchant because you can't stop me. You can't stop nothing.
I can do whatever I want.
That's right. My Earthen Arms go on anything. I don't care. Put it on my equipment. Shut up. Eyeless Watcher is a green and 3 colorless 1/1, and it is devoid. But when it enters the battlefield, it puts 2/1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion creature tokens on the battlefield. So it's 4 mana for sort of a hill giant stats, but across 3 bodies. Okay, it's not quite Brood Monitor, but it's okay.
Yeah, it's just it's the fixed Kozilek's Predator. So how far we've gone from Nest Invader and Kozilek's Predator. Like, a lot of people just got to play with them at Modern Masters 2, and if they never got to play Rise Limited, yes, they were just as good there as they are in Modern Masters. And now we saw our mistakes, and this is what we get because of it. A 1/1 that gets 2 1/1s.
Yeah, because Predator was a 3/3, right?
It was a 3/3 that gave you 2 0/1s. And
right.
The thing about these cards are the spawn tokens aren't actually really ever getting in there, so they are sometimes they deal combat damage and sometimes they're relevant, but mostly they're just mana.
Right.
And so it's whatever. Like, once you use them, now you just have a 1/1.
I really don't think it would have been that bad to make this a 2/2. Like,
I don't either.
Seriously? Like, it had to be a 1/1? Ugh.
Well, they block really well. Scion tokens do block very well.
Sure.
And so you can put 4 power in front of something.
Yeah. And so does this guy, I guess, at his 1/1 stats. Meh.
I'm guessing all these creatures got too good when they got the power boost because like maybe the other aggressive decks just couldn't get through them, and that's probably what it is.
Sure. So there you go. Either way, not super exciting. However, From Beyond is very exciting. This card is a bomb in limited. It is a green and 3 colorless enchantment with Devoid. At the beginning of your upkeep, you put a 1/1 Scion onto the battlefield, and for a green and a colorless, you may sacrifice it to search your library for an Eldrazi card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your library. So it's a pseudo Bitter Blossom-esque effect. It's making mana, it's making dudes, and then if you have so much mana and so many dudes you don't care anymore, you're just going to go and find the best creature in your deck and slam it down.
Yeah, I played a mono green Eldrazi deck in a versus video, and the first game I played, From Beyond triggered twice. I sacked it and put Ulamog into play that same turn.
Nice.
So the card is pretty powerful. I think it'll see potential play later. I still don't know if this is better than Explosive Vegetation, due to the fact that a land will get to where you have 7, it produces 2 mana for an Eldrazi.
Right.
Which this doesn't work that well with. But getting the 1/1s does have some upsides. Mostly limited, though. I just don't think that we have enough tools yet to do the ramp. I think next set they'll give us a lot more tools, and this card might become better because of it.
Sure. I mean, like, Awakening Zone was really fun, really cool, and all it did was make the Eldrazi spawn every single turn. But this one, not only does it make 1/1s instead of 0/1s, it can sacrifice itself to go find an Eldrazi.
Yeah, it's a bomb limited card, both in limit and draft and sealed.
Yeah, it is a significant upgrade from Awakening Zone, and even Awakening Zone was great back in the day.
Yeah, I love playing with that in limited.
Yeah, so Giant Mantis is a green and 3 colorless 2/4 with reach. It's a giant spider, but now it's a mantis.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's this thing that's happening with Magic that ever since we gave Ulamog his life, like Sarkhan went back in time and saved Ugin's life.
Yes.
Excuse me. Ever since then, there's just not been a spider printed. Except for like that huge gigantic 6/6 that can survive everything. Like it just feels like all the spiders are gone and they're just getting upgraded by all the other ones. Like why is this not just giant spider?
This is that butterfly effect, right? Where he like stepped on a spider and didn't realize that was like the mother of literally every spider for the end of time.
No, he stepped on a butterfly and the spider died because it didn't have anything to eat.
Oh.
So it's a literal butterfly effect.
Nice. And it also includes starvation. Way to go. Because everything's better with starvation.
And now we have giant mantis instead of giant spider.
Yay. It's okay. Like, giant spider was okay. Giant mantis is also okay.
Just actual same cards.
Yeah. 100% same card, 100% just as boring and not as exciting, and you would probably replace this very quickly if you're like, what should I cut from my deck? Probably this is the first one to go.
Yep. This is the thing to go.
Now, one that is never, ever going to be replaced is Green Warden of Murasa, a 2 green, 4 colorless, 5/4. When it enters the battlefield, you may return target card from your graveyard to your hand. When it dies, you may exile it, and if you do, you return target card from your graveyard to your hand. This is 2 ridiculous Eternal Witnesses just stapled onto each other.
This card is disgusting, and I'm still trying to figure out how to play it in Standard. And I will figure it out.
Yeah,
I will break it. I will figure this card out, and I will play like 4 in a deck. I just don't know how yet. But it's so good.
God, it's amazing. Like, it's so good with sacrifice effects. I mean, like, it's just... everything is coming back all the time. You have Den Protector and Green Warden. Like, does it ever stop? Like...
yeah, Green's card advantage is just better than Blue's right now, and that's gross.
That's amazing. I mean, and it's one of those where we've lived in a world for so long where Blue always had the best card advantage and always had the best draw spells and always had the best recursion type stuff, and now Green is like just it's our turn. It's our turn now.
No, every other color has a higher win percentage than Blue in Magic. That's just how it works. Blue has the worst win percentage.
Nice. Well, there you go. Well, cards like these are going to keep it that way.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
this card's
gross.
Bomb limited rare. Absolutely never ever, don't play with this card if you can't help it. Like, this will pull you into green if you open it first for your drafts. Like, it is a monster card.
Very. I mean, I just don't know how you ever beat the attrition. Like, just to keep in mind, these dies trigger is a May, so you can loop Green Wardens when you want to.
Yeah,
you don't have to get a card back. You can just keep it in your graveyard, then play another one and pick that one back up.
Oh, that's so sick.
Yeah,
yes.
So it's like so difficult to attrition out. When you have to kill these things, they become an actual abyss.
Wow, that is nuts.
Very good.
This card is fan-freaking-tastic. So we're going to move on to Infuse with the Elements. A green and 3 colorless instant with Converge. Put X +1/+1 counters on target creature, where X is the number of colors of mana spent to cast it. That creature gains trample until end of turn. So it's not just a one-turn boost. These are counters that it is putting on. And the mana in Standard is so ridiculous, and the Converge cards, like the really good Converge cards, and we'll get to them here in a little bit, are so very, very powerful. Could this see constructed play?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Are you super sure?
Yes, I would bet 1,000 pies to 1.
That's a lot of pies, dude.
Yeah, it might make you go broke, because the behind the curtain deal with the pie bets is if you throw it, you buy it.
Yes.
And so
I will make you buy all the pies.
Well, no. If you throw it, you buy it. So I would throw one pie, you throw 1,000 at me. I'm saying that's the rate that I have confidence that this card's bad.
Wow, you would just be like a pile of just like, just whipped cream and, just
I would be a shell of a
shells.
man. I'd be a crust of a man.
Wow, you would be so crusty. Not salty, you got crusty. So, all right. So, granted that its constructed playability is suspect. However, it's a very powerful effect. How good is this in Limited? It seems like one of the actual great Converge cards in Limited.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to really figure out, because the whole thing about this format is like you can use your mana to start going bigger in the games. So maybe this card's good. Right now, I'm leaning towards it's not that good.
Oh, I think it's very good. I think this card is extremely playable, and even if you're just playing it with 2 colors, 2 +1/+1 counters, giving it trample, instant speed with and getting that effect that turn. I don't know. I have a feeling like, again, that I don't know, man. I got a hankerin. I got that weird hankerin, man. I got it.
All right. Well, we'll see where it goes from here.
All right, fine. Hankering has been acknowledged. Jotty Offshoot. Now, I got a hankerin here that this card is crap. It is a green 0/3 with Defender that has landfall, that whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. And yeah, this is pretty bad.
If you have a lot of gain life things, it could be interesting. It's also maybe a sideboard card in Standard if like you have ways, like if you really need to have a blocker against red decks that gains life.
Okay.
I could see it.
I could not see it.
I could see it as a sideboard card. It's an 0/3. It can block some things, like a Zergo, and that's about it.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Can't even block an Abbott because it's going to have prowess, and then it's bad again. So.
I remember a Defender Plant from the last set that never got to block either.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, card is bad. Card's not good. Moving on. Don't play it. Lifespring Druid. Here is an interesting card. A green and 2 colorless 2/1 elf druid that taps to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So Birds of Paradise was a format defining card for many, many years. We're talking, we had like something like 7 or 8 years of Birds of Paradise in Standard.
I watched the Forgotten Lore.
Nice. Thank you. And then they removed it from Standard, and then you have cards like this one, where it's a common at this point, a 3-mana 2/1 common, but it does add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. It doesn't say you have to use it to cast creatures. You can do whatever you want with that mana, and they are certainly slowing down the format as a result of cards like these versus cards like Llanowar Elves and Birds of Paradise to really boost you forward.
Yeah, I mean, Llanowar Elves and Birds of Paradise were a little degenerate. Like, it's really funny because a couple years ago, you could play up to 16 elf effects, 1 mana accelerants, and now there's only 1, and it's only for elves. They just locked it up. They're just like, we became racist. We only want elvish producing mana for elves.
Wow.
It's staying with us.
it's staying somewhere. It's good. I mean, it's one of those where I like that they can do that to Magic. I like that they can say, you know what, you had all of these riches before. We're going to make it completely opposite of that, and we're going to see what happens as a result of doing that.
Well, and that's why Magic will always exist, as long as they're not doing their job lazily and they're actually working on twisting the dials and making sure that everything changes a little bit, like we're going to be playing this game because it's awesome.
Yeah.
And right now we're in a new world where Magic starts kind of on turn 2, unless you really want the aggressive things. But we see all these Savannah Lions cards, and we always crap all over them because they're not that good. And Magic does start on turn 2, and we're all fine with that. And so like I like it, and this card's great and limited. It blocks better than it attacks. But it produces mana better than any other thing that it could do.
Yeah, and it helps with all your converge spells, which is really sweet. And as a result, can help you also power out your sweet beaters quicker.
Yep.
So we have Murasa Ranger up next, which is a green and 3 colorless 3/3 human warrior with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 4 mana, a green and 3 colorless. And if you do, you put 2+1/+1 counters on it. Why in the world is this thing not an ally? I don't get it.
Well, because it's a ranger.
Because it's a Scouty Ranger guy, and the Scouty Ranger guys...
Did Walker Texas Ranger work alone?
Ooh.
Yes.
Well, sometimes. And sometimes him and Haley Joel Osment, they had adventures.
Oh, well, now I just outed you, actually. You have now watched Texas Ranger. Never seen an episode. I don't know why you would ever watch an episode.
I've watched a clip or two. Leave me alone.
Or a few seasons.
Right. No. There is an amazing clip with Haley Joel Osment, however, if you Google that, and you'll find it, and it's great. But I don't know why Texas Murasa Ranger here is not helping out his fellow allies. He looks like an ally, he smells like an ally, yet he is not an ally. Regardless, this is the bomb landfall creature for green. There's a different one. There's a 5-mana 4/4 that we'll get to, but I think this is certainly the bomb one because it gets permanent counters onto it, and every turn thereafter, as long as you're playing a land, you have mana producers such as Lifespring Druid, and you can get this guy to immense proportions.
Yeah, and you can keep just like, I guess I'm not going to do anything this turn, make it a 5/5, maybe do something next turn, then if the board sells out, keep making it bigger and bigger. So I do like that effect of it, where it can just immediately start becoming a huge threat on the board and force your opponent to do something with it, but it's at the cost of tempo. So it's going to play really well, and it's also just a board stall breaker. Late game, both players are a little clogged up, no one knows how to attack, but this thing keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it finally kills them.
Yeah, this card can definitely win you the game over the long term, and is a very powerful option, and there's a reason it's uncommon.
Yep.
So I'm going to move on to Natural Connection. Green and 2 colorless instant. It searches your library for a basic land card, puts it onto the battlefield tab, and then you shuffle. This is Rampant Growth at instant speed for 1 more mana. Again, we see the slowing down of the format where, we would be much happier with Rampant Growth. And if Rampant Growth got reprinted, we would be going on and on about how, well, they slowed down the creatures, but they didn't really slow down the ramp. But this is them both slowing down the creatures and slowing down the ramp when you have this card show up.
Yeah, it's very boring. It triggers landfall at instant speed. Never going to see standard play. I don't even know how good it is in limited.
You have to have a lot of landfall, like a lot.
Yeah, a lot of landfall or like a lot of converge and a lot of high-end stuff. I am just not a fan of this card.
Yeah, I don't really like it. But again, maybe there's a converge deck out there that we're just not aware of, and this is one of the key components of it, is you need a card like this. You need a card like Lifespring Druid to make sure you get all your colors. Maybe.
Sure.
But that's pretty much it. However, you would much rather have Nissa's Renewal, which is a green and 5 colorless sorcery to put up to 3 basic land cards onto the battlefield tapped, and then you gain 7 life. This card is sweet and is able to actually power out your Eldrazi, actually trigger landfall 3 times. Like, this card seems very good. Yeah,
no, I like this card a lot, and we'll see where it goes in standard and even in limited. Like, this is what you want in your converge decks, in your huge Eldrazi decks. In standard, I could see it seeing some play because it does just get you to 10 immediately, and it gives you the life to survive the turn.
Right.
So I do like this card. I don't know yet. I've got to wait and see what people are doing. We're also not doing anything crazy in this format like Cruel Ultimatum, so you're only accelerating into cards like Ulamog, which I guess is kind of a Cruel Ultimatum.
Which is kind of really sweet. I mean, I think it's really cool. But and what we've also found ever since the days of Primal Command is that 7 life is kind of that magic number that kind of buys you another turn.
It's just also, it feels good to gain 7 life. I think that's more why they picked 7. Just a good number. We all love 7. Why is 7 the number that gives you life?
Right. Well, dude, what's in the box, dude? What's in the box? 7.
I don't get it.
The movie.
Don't get it. Never seen it. I'm kidding. Of course I know what's in the box.
Oh, thank you. You know what's in the box. It's Nissa. That's what's in the box.
Wrath is in the box.
Yes, it is. Very good. All right. So Oran Reef Hydra is a 2 green, 4 colorless 5/5 with trample and has landfall. That whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. And if that land was a forest, you put 2 of them on Oran Reef Hydra instead. This is a bomb rare. This is a card that wins lots of games and is a card that you want in your sealed pool and a card that you will happily first pick and draft.
Oh yeah, I mean it's very good limited. I mean I like the dragon and the sphinx a little bit more in this cycle, but it's still good and
it's still a monster. And this is where natural connection. This is renewal. Like this is a card that helps pay off and helps even sort of justify you playing those cards to start with. Because this is card I want instant speed landfall with this card. You know I want to go get 3 lands with this card. So that's fantastic. So it's hard to say a bad word about the old Hydra here.
I agree.
Oran Reef Invoker. It is our second Invoker, which is a green and a colorless 2/2. So it's a bear, automatically playable. However, for 8 mana, it gets
That's
+5.
insulting, though. She doesn't look that bearish.
It is a very nice, great personality, human shaman. It's a 2 mana 2/2 for a green and a colorless, 8 mana colon, gives itself +5/+5 and trample until end of turn. This is definitely a card that I will play every copy that you'll give me.
Yeah, I mean it's great. Like, it's a great mana sink for like green and red because I think those are like the colors that might be trying to do a lot of the Eldrazi shenanigans. So just having those mana sinks in these invokers is really good.
Sure.
And I did see this card do a lot of good work. Boards do stall out. Like, sometimes you don't draw your Eldrazi. Sometimes you deal with their flyers, and you kind of stare at each other because you're a green deck, but you can't really attack.
Right.
And so you're like, all right, now I have 8 mana. I'll attack you for 7 and see what's happening. Like, it might not win the game, but it might take enough resources to eventually help you.
There you go. So we're going to keep on moving. We're going to talk about Plated Crusher. Pretty straightforward card. 3 green, 4 colorless. So we have 7 mana for a 7/6 trample hexproof. Okay. This card's a monster.
Yeah, and I like the flavor text too on it.
It is not interested in your concept of strength through unity. No. It's a beast. In fact, it is a beast that can and will crush. One of those cards that I don't want to pick early. I would rather have it be sent to me late after I am the green deck and I am the ramp deck and I'm starting to get all this acceleration. But this certainly seems like one of those cards that can just end games. It's not Palaka Worm. Palaka Worm was amazing. But this is about as close as you're going to get in this set.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, Plaka Worm was awesome, and it does have the exact same cost, but a trample hexproof is no joke. Like, when you play your big fatty, you were like, it might die, so I hope I might have to keep this creature back in case this dies for combat. And this thing's not going to die. At least it's not going to die before combat.
Right.
And so, like, that's just a great, safe place to be. Like, here's my thing. It's not going to die. If I have any pump for next turn, I get to play it. So it's really hard to deal with. This is going to win a lot of games of limited just because they can't kill it.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to put 6 power in front of it, and then you're going to have literally stone anything to boost its power and toughness, and then you're going to win from there.
Yeah, very, very good card. Really good payoff spell.
There you go. So we have Plummet is up next, a classic spell since I want to say M10 was the first time this thing showed up. And it is a green and a colorless instant. It destroys target creature with flying. It's straightforward. It's a card that we've spoke about many times in the past, and the general consensus is in draft it's always a sideboard card, but in sealed it's a main deckable card because sometimes you just have to kill those flyers that are very important.
Yeah, that's exactly how I play this card. And the one thing I want to note about it, since we've talked about it in every set, because it's always in every set, is they finally took a different direction with the art, which I love. They've had it fun. Like, usually the thing that's plummeting is like we're shooting arrows up at it and it falls, the bird falls out of the sky. Right. But this is the actual elf going to kill the thing, and it's the thing plummeting, which is really cool.
Yeah, dude. It's the elf's blade carved deep into the Eldrazi drone's fleshy lattices. Yeah. Dude, that's awesome. Great flavor. Super cool image. I'm glad, again, it's not just like some dragon that's like going like, Meh! And then it's dead. It's more interesting than that.
Yeah,
so
way more.
We have Reclaiming Vines, which I don't know what's wrong with Creepy Mold, but all right, whatever. 2 green, 2 colorless, sorcery, destroys target artifact, enchantment, or land. So, okay.
Yep. Great that this set has so many, new and unique magic cards
that we've never seen before.
Never, ever.
Card's not very good.
I really just don't actually understand why every set has to have 3 unplayable LD spells. Like that's the one thing I'm not getting, because I don't think anyone plays with LD. Do they just don't. No one plays with these cards ever.
Well, I would say that there's a little confirmation bias in that. I mean, we don't know every Magic player type. This is a spell that is important when you can now run Creeping Mold and this in your casual deck, so you can have, or in your commander deck, so you can have multiple of these types of effects in those formats. So I understand it. I get it. I'm just saying that, like, at the end of the day, pretty underwhelming, pretty boring.
Yeah, I know that both of us don't play Commander.
Sure.
And we constantly, insult Commander players because of our ignorance.
Yes.
It's okay. It just happens, right? But I don't think I would want to be the dude that shows up with the 40 LD deck. That's not the guy I want to be. Just be like, kill your land. Nah, kill your land.
No.
The
guy, the person who is even worse, in my very limited experience, is the Time Walk guy. He's like, oh, I'm going to take all the turns. Kira, the Great Glass Spinner, is my commander, and I have all the briberies, and I have all the control magics, and I'm going to have all the time walks, and I have all the recursion to do so, and that stuff seemed far more like annoying / too spiky for what should be a fun. Let's all just battle some cards and have some fun with it. So what we're trying to say is this card's bad.
Oh, it's awful.
Card's pretty stank nasty, and we're going to move on.
It's bad, and it should feel bad for existing.
Yeah, we're going to move on that it's not bad, which is Retreat to Kazandu. Our last retreat. It is a green and 2 colorless enchantment, and as with all of them, they have landfall. You can choose one of these options. You can put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, or gain 2 life. So in limited, this thing seems like complete bananas, because every land is going to make a creature better, the best creature that you have, or the most evasive creature that you have. And is this even possible in constructed?
I actually think it is. Every fetch land nets you 3 life. Courser's gain life was a little bit relevant. Mm-hmm. The +1/+1 counters could be relevant. It seems like a sideboard card, and outside of that, I need more testing. But, the set reviews are before the 2 weeks of me, jumping into a house with a bunch of guys learning the format.
Sure.
So I have no idea yet, but I will start trying it in sideboards.
Right.
To help gain life through the burn decks.
Sure. So we'll see, but certainly in limited, this thing seems like absolutely 100% playable every single time.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, this card is fan-freaking-tastic. So we're going to move on to Rot Shambler. He shambles through the rot as he is a fungus. It's a green and the colorless 1/1, and whenever another creature you control dies, you put a +1/+1 counter on him. So a little innocuous, but over time, I think could be quite a force, particularly when you have Eldrazi Scions that can sacrifice themselves.
Yeah, and that's just where this card's playability comes in. Like, you can play it early, and if one of your guys trades off, it gets a little bit bigger. You start sacking your Eldrazi Scions, and it makes the Rot Shambler bigger, and you're casting your bigger spells. And so eventually it might be able to do some damage, but you're only going to want to play it in a deck that's hyper aggressive, has a lot of early things going on, because it...
Really?
I mean, I don't think it's... Like, a lot of cards you want on your curve, but I don't think this is the kind of card that you just want to top deck in the middle of the game. I
mean, it's not one that you want to top deck per se, obviously, but, like, if you top deck it and there's a board state of any sort of manner, and particularly if you have Eldrazi Scions out, I mean, it doesn't take but 2 or 3 Eldrazi Scions to make this guy a 4/4, and that's really amazing for just 2 mana.
Yeah, and I think that's where, the Black-Red Sacrifice deck is heading. That's where the Rot Shamblers want to live in. But outside of that, it's not. I don't think I just put this in any deck that's green.
I mean, obviously it depends on factors, but this to me is a very powerful uncommon. I think this card is incredibly good.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see where it goes, but I do think that it's only good in very synergistic decks with the Sacrifice, with the Altars Reaps. Without that, I just feel like it's another thing that could get bounced or killed, and you had to set up, and maybe you made decisions to get it bigger, and then all of a sudden they killed it, and it forces your hand in a lot of ways. So I'd much rather sometimes just have bears that trade or attack, or I know what they're going to do and be, and when I top deck them, they're still a little bit more powerful.
I don't know, man. I gotta totally disagree with you in this one. I think this card is nuts, and I would play it in any deck that's green. This card seems super good.
All right.
Fine. Skive Leopard is a green 1/1 with landfall, where it gets +1/+1 till end of turn. It's the closest you're getting to your step links. It is now in green, which is the right color, which should be in the first place. I have heard rumors / whispers that this thing is actually constructed playable. What do you think?
Oh, I definitely think it's constructed playable.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, at fetch, it's only 3 damage. So, the idea is, what they did to these creatures is they made them less high variance, but still good. Like Steppe Lynx couldn't attack
Right.
when you didn't have a land,
Right.
whereas Skive Leopard can. And when you have the one landfall trigger, it has the same power as it. Same thing with Plated Jupiter and that 2/1. But when the fetch land happens, it's one less. So it's one more without a land, equivalent with a land, one less with a fetch land.
Sure.
So it's just not as powerful at the best and not as bad at the worst. So I actually think this card's very good, and I think it's going to pair really well with Warden and Jamoka's Command and hyper-aggressive strategies.
Yeah. Nice.
Oh, yeah. I'll play this. This is going to see standard play. I mean, I think this card's going to see standard play next weekend at the Open.
Wow. So, yeah, and this to me is one of those cards. It's like, I personally just don't see it, but, I'm happy to be surprised, and I want to be surprised. This is the type of like aggro, super sweet creature that I enjoy, and so the ability that it has some playability in that regard, like I'm excited. I want Skive Leopard to get there, to be there on turn 1, to be under the camera and getting all these boosts and being very powerful.
Yeah, and I think it'll be there.
Yay, I'm excited. All right, so we're going to move on now to Seek the Wilds, a green and a colorless sorcery. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature or land card from among them and put them into your hand. So you only get one or the other. You cannot get both. And you put the rest on the bottom of your library, so you're not able to fuel dredge and or fuel delve and things in standard. So how good and how playable is this card?
It scales on the amount of colors you want to play in your deck.
Okay.
So I would not just play it in a 2-color deck unless you have some significant bombs or you want a high curve and only want to play 17 lands and you play this as your quote-unquote 18th, but when you're flooding you get a creature.
Sure.
But it seems pretty good in the decks that are trying to converge and do a lot of awesome things with that mechanic. But it's not a card that I like to play a ton of, especially because it doesn't have graveyard shenanigans, which makes it not standard playable.
Right.
But yeah, I would probably play one in a deck that's like multicolor. But you don't want to play too many because, yes, sometimes it'll find your land, but you paid 2 mana for a land drop, and then you paid 2 additional mana for whatever spell you're casting, which is a significant curve loss.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of just slowing yourself down over and over and over again. And, I looked at one of the decks that a friend of mine was playing, and she had like 3 copies in her deck, and I was like, you really don't want to be doing that. Because you're spending so much time and so many resources trying to find things, you're not actually doing things.
And yeah, technically every Seek the Wilds makes other copies worse too.
Absolutely.
Because every time a Seek the Wilds is in a pile, that just means it's not a card you could have gotten.
Exactly. So it's kind of mediocre, and as a result, we're going to keep moving to Snapping Gnarlid, a green and a colorless 2/2. I'm already on board. And whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So if Skive Leopard is playable, is this playable?
Quite possibly. I mean, it attacks like a Fleecemane, but it's not as good as a Fleecemane. Like, it really depends on what these decks look like. Like, this is another Ferocious Enabler, so maybe there is some kind of green-red hyper-aggressive deck with, like, 12 fetch lands, Become Immense, Teamer Battle Rage, Atarka's Command, all the green and red aggressive creatures. Maybe that deck exists. Maybe I have to build that. Man, my list, after these reviews, my list of decks I have to try is so big.
It's going to be so sweet. The fact that Atarka's Command can now actually do that last ability. You can put a land into the play at instant speed, actually is really sweet.
Well, I feel like they knew that.
Well, I can understand that.
Yeah,
but now we get to be excited about
sweet.
it.
Like, we didn't know about that, and now we do, and that's really exciting. Where you can give it double pumps, like
right.
a +1/+1 my team, and play this, which landfall triggers 2 other creatures, and all of a sudden they're gigantic.
Exactly, and all of a sudden you are winning those games, which is super cool. So again, to me, if Skive Leopard is playable, I think this guy has to be in the conversation.
Yeah, there might just be a landfall green-red deck that maybe Naya based too. Like,
sure.
all right, I gotta go. We gotta stop doing set reviews. I gotta go build decks now.
All right.
I'm
Thanks
getting
for your
antsy.
time. I'll just do the rest of this by myself.
This has been wonderful.
All right, so we're going to move on to Swell of Growth, a green and a colorless instant. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn, and you may put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. So this is instant speed landfall. It's kind of a powered down pump spell, particularly for green, because we normally see bigger pumps from green, but however, with the landfall triggers and the power of the landfall creatures we've already talked about, is this good enough?
Yeah, I mean, it's a decent trick. You don't have to have the landfall thing happen. That's just a bonus. It can accelerate. You can trigger landfall.
Right.
Yeah, this is a fine card in draft or sealed. Depends. Like draft, I feel like you're all trying to ram 2 Eldrazi, so like using this as an acceleration is not great, and you don't really want +2/+2 effects. But in the more aggressive strategy, I think it's very good.
Sure. So I mean, like it's one of those like if the land, if you don't have a land in your hand, it still seems good enough to play. It is a pump spell. You like pump spells in green. Pump spells in green are important. But when it's good, it's amazing.
Yes.
And when it's at its worst, it's still okay, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. It's a fine card.
So Sylvan Scrying is up next, and this card comes directly from, was it Fifth Dawn? Is that right?
Might have been. I don't remember.
Fine. Old man was there. Sylvan Scrying has been reprinted for the first time since its original printing, so this card had gotten up there in price just because people wanted to find the lands that they're looking for and put them in their hand and not just sort of the Urzatron pieces anymore when you have cards like Ancient Stirrings that would find them for you. But now you have the ability to really just, go get anything you want. This helps out in casual formats because people like this card. However, in the sealed and draft kind of portions, this is one of those cards that I don't really think is very good, but maybe in the Converge decks it's worth playing.
Well, yeah, I mean, the problem is like there's not a lot of dual lands. There are some utility lands in the format that you might want to search up, but mostly people are going to try to get their Converge lands, and I'd much rather have Pilgrim's Eyes. It can be Bone Splinters. It's a 1/1 flyer. It can trade with something.
Right.
That's always more important. So Sylvan Scrying, because it doesn't have a body attached to it, and it just puts a land in your hand, it's just not that great unless your Converge spells are so good that you just need to make sure your mana is consistent.
Right. And in that case, again, I feel like we're sort of like, you're in like your 22nd or 23rd card. Do I play this or do I not? And at that point, it seems to me like this is a pretty low power card.
Yeah. I'm not the biggest fan.
Not a huge fan. However, we're going to keep moving with Jeru Beastmaster. So the Beastmaster, which was a cool 80s movie, is a green and 5 colorless 5/5, and whenever it or another ally enters the battlefield under your control, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn because it is an elf warrior ally on the back of a monster. That card is cool.
Yeah, this card's great, and it also helps all your allies right away get a relevant ability, so it bumps them all up.
Right.
That combat change is going to really swing a lot of games, and so I do feel like this attacks really well once it attacks, but it also comes into play really well.
Yeah, this card is this is one of the best allies that exist. I mean, it is expensive, but it is an incredible effect.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, this card is great. You pick it early, you play it always, and I love it. I mean, I don't know if you play it always. It's one of those you don't want to play a ton of them. If you're the ally deck, obviously you want to, but when you're not, it's just a good 6 mana 5/5.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Now, Jeru Stalwart is a green and 2 colorless 0/1 with Converge, entering the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter for each color of mana spent to play it. Now, and also note that it is an Elf Scout ally, because now the Scout is an ally, whereas before the Scout was not an ally. Okay.
Yeah, it's just whoever really wants to join.
Yeah, whatever, But if you're playing, for two different colors of mana, it's a 2/3. For 3 different colors of mana, it's a 3/4. So a 3 mana 3/4 is incredibly awesome, but a 3 mana 2/3 is okay and is perfectly fine on the curve. But it also gets to trigger all of your ally/rally triggers, which is great. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those. It's above average 2/3 in my opinion because you're probably just going to cast this with 2 colors of mana.
Yeah, more often than not, if you really need an ally, and that's what helps with being an ally trigger and Converge. So, even if you're not an ally deck, it's a 3/4 for 4 or for 3, which is pretty good.
Sure.
So yeah, it kind of works in both those decks, and that's really where I think they wanted it. So it does look like a pretty well designed card.
Yeah, I think it's sweet, and this is one of those that if there's a Converge deck in Standard, this guy is going to be in there as a 3 mana 3/4. But again, when you're talking you can get a 3 mana 3/4, it's like, well, yeah, but Anafense is a 3 mana 4/4.
Yeah.
So
and it still costs 3 different colors, and they're the best colors. They force you to play the best colors, much like Ulamog's Crushers force you to do the right play.
That's right.
Anafense forces you to play the right colors.
Yes, she does, as she should. So we're going to move on to Jeru Warcaller, a 2 green and 3 colorless 2/1, an elf warrior ally that whenever it or another ally enters the battlefield under your control, creatures you control get +2/+2 until end of turn. So this is even better.
Yeah, this is very good. The rally ability is much better than the Warcaller's stats, but that turn is the big turn. That's the turn where when you cast the Warcaller, you want the effect to actually do a lot of damage and win the game.
Yeah, this card is like, I mean, this is just one of those that at the top of your curve, you have like 3 creatures out, and you play this girl, and just like all of them get huge, and all of them are going to swing for lethal, and your opponent is going to have to chump block and all this other stuff. And so, you know, you really want allies after her, obviously, so you can get this sweet bonus one more time, but that first bonus is going to be absolutely monstrous.
Yeah.
And that is incredibly impacting. So this is a very powerful uncommon and a card that you really want in those ally decks. So up next we have a Territorial Baloth, which is a green and 4 colorless 4/4, and landfall gives it +2/+2 until end of turn. So this is more or less what should be the power, you know, common landfall creature for green. It is very, very powerful. I saw many people touting how awesome it was last night at the pre-release, and you know, 5-mana 4/4s in general are great, and when they have sweet upsides like this one, they can just take over games.
Yeah, this card's just phenomenal. I've seen it do a lot of damage already, and any fetch land makes it even more disgusting. So a very good card. Like, I don't know what else you say about it. Just when you're not an ally deck, when you're not trying to do other things, when you're just trying to be a beatdown deck, this card is fabulous.
This card is for you. That's what it is. It should be in all of your green deck because it's sweet. So we're going to take a look now at Undergrowth Champion. Now, this is a card that started out very cheap and has gotten very expensive. 2 green and a colorless for a 2/2 mythic elemental. If damage would be dealt to it, while it has a +1/+1 counter on it, prevent that damage and remove a +1/+1 counter from it. And landfall gives it a +1/+1 counter. So it first came out, and everyone was like, this card is complete crap, why is it mythic? And I was like, hold on a second. Phantom creatures, which came from Judgment, were really sweet and were good. This card looks completely bananas, and when Deathmist Raptor came out, it had a very similar reaction of, I don't understand this card doesn't even look very good, why is it mythic, blah, blah, blah. It ends up being like one of the hallmarks of Standard pretty much ever since it's been printed. So, you know, this card to me is you play a fetch land, it's a 4/4 that is so difficult to remove, they're going to need to use a spell that says like exile target creature rather than deal X damage to get rid of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the card is actually a little underpowered.
But Brad,
it might be good maybe in a deck that wants to play a ton of fetch lands because it's just better than Deathmist there, but Deathmist is more resilient. Like, I feel like it might get a lot better after Deathmist rotates and Den Protector, or maybe that Deathmist and Den Protector are too slow and this is the card you need, but it's not really a good 3-drop. And that's like the problem with this card, is it's a better 4-drop. And sure. I don't see it. I actually don't see this card doing much, and I don't know why it's gaining steam.
I bet.
No, this card will see some standard play.
Now it's well, I don't see it, and it's not very good. But it's seeing standard play though.
Well, yeah, I don't say it's not going to see standard. I'm not going to pie bet on this card.
Oh, you should pie bet me on this card.
No, I like winning all the pie bets.
Again, this is one of those where this is my disconnect. What happens when Skive Leopard is playable, yet you're underwhelmed, you don't like this card very much, and I'm just like, it's really weird to me. I understand 1-drops versus 3-drops. I understand that really this is a 4-drop because you want to be able to play a land after that. But, the ability for this thing to get counters, to prevent its damage, to stay around a long time. This card to me was the one that jumped out as like, wow, people are underestimating this thing. And now it's like $20 or something. So people have stopped doing it.
$20? Wow.
It's
okay.
absurd.
Well, Phantom Centaur also had this clause that said protection from black. And this card has been dying to all the removal spells.
Sure. Which it does.
It dies to Valorous Stance, Obzon Charm,
Ultimate
Ruinous
Price.
Path, Ultimate Price.
Right.
So that's the biggest problem.
Yeah, creatures die to removal spells, but when they don't have those removal spells, this card gets pretty nutty pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So we'll see, but I still wanted that pie bet, dude.
I can't give you a pie bet because I don't like being wrong.
I see what you did there. We're going to move on to Unnatural Aggression. A green and 2 colorless instant that is devoid. Target creature you control fights target creature an opponent controls, and if that creature an opponent controls would die this turn, exile it instead. So A, it doesn't exile yours, which is nice, doesn't feed their processors. B, it's exiling theirs, and C, it's instant speed fighting. So all of these things point to a very, very good card.
Yeah. It's a little weak in this format since I think all the cards are pretty comparable in power and toughness. A lot of the green cards are the same size as the red cards. And So we'll see how good this card goes. It does seem like the kind of card you want to use once you have your Eldrazi in play, and maybe it's going to be better as I see more play. I just haven't seen it do that much yet.
Yeah, exactly. So this card, this card is still sweet. It's one of those cards that I want to pick and play in all of my green decks, and I want to definitely play this in sealed, where I think it's even better. But again, anything that's fighting creatures, it's the way that green gets rid of creatures, and so this is your premium removal spell in green because it's about as good as you're going to get.
Yep.
All right, we're going to move on to Void Attendant as we get to our last two green cards. However, bonus, we're going to talk about all the multicolor cards here in just a moment. Void Attendant is a green and 2 colorless 2/3 that is devoid. For a green and a colorless, you may put a card an opponent owns from exile onto that player into that player's graveyard, and for doing that, you get a 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion that has sack it to add a mana to your mana pool. So this is another one of those cards, much like the kind of the looter that we had in blue. We have this one which can start to make its own mana based on sort of processing all of your opponent's exiled cards. So that to me is very, very powerful. This card is really sweet.
Yeah, for 2 mana it makes a 1/1, and it also is a 2/3 for 3, which isn't bad. But the concern I have is there's not a lot of ingest in green or ways to exile, so it's going to really lean on another color.
Sure.
And so I'm maybe this card's like, there actually isn't a lot of processors, and these abilities are pretty good and free when you try to build these decks. So this card's probably a lot better than it looks on paper, but it doesn't look that great on paper.
I think it looks great on paper because I love repeatable effects. I love the fact that we found, at least even firsthand experience, it's pretty easy to get things exiled. And I know also from that experience is that you really kind of need those extra scions, that little bit of extra mana to make sure that you're able to hit your really expensive spells. So this to me is a pretty fantastic uncommon that you're going to want to play every time. However, we're going to move on to the last green card, which is an absolute mega bomb. This card is insanely awesome. Woodland Wanderer. Now, I know it's awesome for a few reasons. One, it's a great card. We're going to read all of its stats here. But two, it was previewed by Aaron Forsyth. And I know Aaron, I'm sure he was just like, can I just have like one of the best constructed cards? And they're like, here you go.
Yeah.
A green and 3 colorless rare elemental. It is a 2/2 with vigilance and trample. However, the power comes from Converge. It enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each color of mana spent to cast it. So just 2 different colors, and this is a 4/4 vigilance trample for 4 mana. For all 4 different colors, which is stupidly easy in standard right now, you're able to put this thing as a 6/6. For God's sakes, a 6/6 vigilance trample for 4. That is amazing.
Yeah, like 6/6 trample vigilance is no joke. It single-handedly, the reason why I like this card so much is it single-handedly trumps Gideon.
Yeah.
Gideon can't attack into it, and this will trample over and kill the Gideon.
Yeah.
So if you play a 6/6 Woodland Wanderer, your opponent can't play Gideon in response.
Yeah.
And there's not many cards that can say that.
No, man. This card is nutty goodness, and like after I heard Chapin and Flores talk about how easy the mana was and how good the mana is going to be and how unbelievably easy it is to get all these colors, I was just like, okay, this card, I thought it was good, and now it's going to be like one of the best cards in the format until something changes.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think this card is going to mesh well with the format, and we're going to see it being played a lot. I do think that this card is phenomenal.
Yeah, this is a bomb rare. Pick it, play it always. Never, ever pass it. This card is absolutely amazing. So, as promised, we're going to move on to our multicolored cards here, which begins with Angelic Captain. So Angelic Captain is a red, white, and 3 colorless 4/3 flyer. Already pretty good. 5 mana for a 4/3 flyer. Whenever it attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each other attacking ally. So it is a very unique ally trigger. It is of itself an angel ally, so it gets you all your sweet ally bonuses. But as a 4/3, you really kind of need some other allies to attack with it to make sure that it's going to live. Otherwise, your opponent should be killing this as soon as they could possibly do so.
Yeah, I mean, it's still just a very powerful card. I think that this is one of the payoffs, and I do like the changing it up. Not everything's about the rally, but it also triggers rally. And
sure.
And I think the card's great. Like, it's really hard to talk about cards like this because you know where they go. They don't go in standard. They go in an LA limited deck.
Right.
That's red and white and maybe another color. Like,
yes.
I don't know what else to say. It's a 4/3 flying angel. You play it.
Yeah, I mean, you do what you got to do. I mean, like, it's really cool to me to see where if they take an air elemental, they take a 5-mana 4/4 flyer, and if they take a toughness away from it, they can do all sorts of crazy things to it because now it is small enough that you can actually deal with it if you need to.
Yeah, exactly. Like the one less toughness allows for a lot of burn spells and removal spells to kill it that normally wouldn't.
Exactly. So this card is really sweet in the decks that it's going to go into. This is a card that you can easily first pick and build around as a result of having a really awesome flyer. It pushes you in a very specific direction, and also because of the where it's so narrow essentially in terms of the decks that it's supposed to go into. This is a card that you can get past maybe second, even third, and be like, oh, thanks. There was that really sweet ally I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So we have up next Bring to Light, a very exciting card, blue, green, and 3 colorless sorcery with Converge. Search your library for a creature, instant, or sorcery card with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of colors of mana spent to cast Bring to Light. Exile that card, then shuffle your library. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. What I did learn is that you have to play it immediately. You can't just sit it on exile and hold it. But that would be absolutely ridiculous if you could do that. But thankfully you can. It's part of the resolution is that you can cast it. However, there are already people trying to build things like, Bring to Light Control or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the problem I have with Bring to Light Control is, like, what do your opening hands look like? Like, everyone else's deck is going to be very consistent and powerful, and you have all these one-ofs in your deck. And I've never really liked one-of decks in aggressive formats. And Bring to Light is very good. The way that I see it is, do you like Siege Rhino? Do you want to cast as many Siege Rhinos in a row as possible and try to win the game? That's where I like this. Yeah, I just want to play, like, the Ojutai Obzon decks that people have played before, but play Bring to Light instead of Ojutai and just cast a Rhino, cast a Rhino, cast a Rhino, cast a Rhino, and then that game's probably done.
Yes.
And so I think that'll be a thing. A lot of people are starting to build these Bring to Light decks, and now I'm just going to take this landfall strategy and just beat the hell out of them. Like, I'm already in. Just Naya, landfall, just crush them.
Love it, and that's great. I mean, like, Bring to Light's cool. You can go find your Wrath of God spells. You can go find your Siege Rhinos. You can go find your bullets. You can go find your answers. Like, this is a very exciting card in what it can do. You can pump all 5 colors of mana into it, which I think is fantastic. This is just an exciting Johnny card. This is a card for the deck builders.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, and that to me is why it's so interesting and exciting, is this card can really kind of get you going when, like, the juices are flowing of, like, well, what can I do? Or I could run, like, 15 one-ofs, and this card can just go get me anything I need anytime I need it.
Mm-hmm.
Card is super sweet. So we're going to move on to Brood Butcher, a green, black, and 3 colors 3/3 rare that has Devoid. Whenever it enters the battlefield, it gives you a free 1/1 Scion, and for a green and a green and a black, you can sacrifice a creature. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn, so it brings its own dude to butcher. It can butcher all of your creatures / trigger effects that when things die, like if you sacrifice your Blister Pod, you all of a sudden get an Eldrazi Scion back, and seems to be a pretty sweet bomb rare. There's a lot of, like, bomb rares in various color combinations, very specifically in all these multicolor cards.
Oh yeah, I mean, multicolor cards are always great. We can see that from the entire cons block that is, like, overshadowing the set in standard. But the more we do the set review, the more I'm thinking, like, there is a lot of things that we don't understand about this set, and, like, I think these landfall creatures are actually really good, and they're not step links or play to Geopede, but Brood Butcher isn't going to leave limited, but it's going to do a lot of damage in limited, and you're going to first pick it. You're going to if you open it in sealed, you're just going to play it every single time.
Yeah, if you can, you should.
Oh yeah, no, this card is fantastic, and I saw it in play a couple times, and it just demolished people.
It will take over a game by itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes combat absolutely miserable, and this is one of the all-star cards that puts you in a green-black deck to start with.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So, speaking of cards that are awesome, Brutal Expulsion is a red, blue, and 2 colorless instant with Devoid that choose one or both, return target spell or creature to its owner's hand, and it deals 2 damage to target creature or a planeswalker, and if that permanent would be put into a graveyard, exile it instead. So the amount of things that this card is doing is a lot. It is very close to Vince or Shaper Savant. It is very close to kind of almost Electrolyze-y type of spell, sort of Remand almost. I mean, mean, there's a lot of kind of meldings of what this card is, but the ability to destroy an etched champion because it is devoid.
It's a devoid. Wow, yeah.
Yeah, the ability, the fact that it can't be stopped by something that counters a red spell or a blue spell, or something that has protection from red or protection from blue. Like, this card does a lot of things right, and I expect this card to see a lot of play.
I do too. And even in Standard, one of the cool things that this card can do is, like, if you're just playing your creatures and they play something, like, you can hold it up against Rhino, and, like, if they played, like, an Anafenza or something, or not an Anafenza, excuse me, like a Rakshasha, you can just be like, bounce your Anafenza, kill your Rakshasha, like, keep attacking you, and you just get this huge tempo boost. Yeah. And so I think this card is going to see a lot of constructive play, but probably not where people originally were thinking of it, which was like Jeskai. That's where I went.
Sure.
But I think Ojutai's Command is better there. But, like, if there's a Grixis deck, I think this card is just perfect for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 4 mana is a lot, and it needs to be doing a lot, but this does a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's just able to clean up a spell and then whatever creature they had in play from that. I love that. It can kill a Planeswalker that's, like, on low toughness. It is a very good Magic card.
Yeah, this card is fantastic. It slices, it dices, it expulsions all over the place. We have Catacomb Sifter as we move to our uncommons. Catacomb Sifter is a black, green, and a colorless for a 2/3 devoid. It comes into the battlefield with a 1/1 Scion alongside it, and whenever another creature you control dies, you scry 1, which is a very powerful ability in a world where creatures can sacrifice themselves, and it's just kind of incremental bonus for playing a card that is already decent on the curve as a 3-mana 2/3, but it's a 3-mana 2/3 that can accelerate you up to 5 mana next turn, and it gets all these benefits when your guys are dying anyway. This is a powerful and subtly so uncommon.
Yeah, and this could be good with, like, Blister Pod in Standard if there's some synergies there, like if there's decks that want to do both these things. It is the one Eldrazi that I've seen in the set that has 3 elbow arms, which is just creepy. It's like the creepiest thing.
There's a lot of elbow arms in that. That's weird.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't really, the first time because of it, I didn't understand what was happening. But and it's coming out of his head. I never understand these.
Dude, I love it. They're so weird. It
just feels like they're like, all right, so what art direction do you want for this set? And they're like, we'll do a lot of drugs and we'll see what happens.
Nice. Saw what you did there, buddy. But either way, this card is great.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good and limited. Could see some Standard in some highly synergistic decks, and the Scry ability will just take over games. You'll just not flood out because creatures are going to die constantly.
Yeah, and you'll be able to get a bonus every single time they do so, and that is fantastic. Moving on to our next card, we've talked a lot about black-white life gain decks, and this is the all-star on top of that, which is a black-white and a colorless 2/2 flyer, Indrana's Emissary. She is a vampire cleric ally, so not only is she triggering all of the ally/rally things at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So she's getting all those amazing triggers whenever anything gains life, and she also flies, so she's got Windrake stats. Like, this is a premier uncommon in that archetype.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just unbelievable. Like, I couldn't even believe it when I read the card. I was just like, this card is dealing 3 damage a turn and gaining you a life. It's just phenomenal. It's a very pushed Magic card. Yeah. This is the new Nighthawk. It's not as good as Nighthawk, but it's close.
Yeah, it's super good, and I think people are. I don't think it's gotten a lot of attention, but I think this card is just incredibly, incredibly powerful. And, like, Standard's in kind of a situation where I don't think this is playable, but man, in Limited, this thing is amazing.
Yeah, very good in Limited, though.
Yeah, fan-freaking-tastic. So we come upon Duststalker, a red, black, and 2 colorless 5/3. This is a rare Eldrazi with Devoid and Haste. And at the beginning of each instep, if you control no other colorless creatures, return it to its owner's hand. So in some ways that sounds like a drawback, and in many ways it can be a bonus when you have Ruinous Paths and the planar outbursts of the world. And, when they have sorcerer speed removal, this guy actually shines the brightest. Now, it feels like to me that they want this to be constructed playable, but I don't think it is at all.
I actually could see it. Like, there's a lot of times when you just need to get a lot of damage in, and, like, we haven't seen a card like this for a while.
Right.
A 5/3 haste for 4 is pretty good, actually. Like, most of them have always seen play one way or another. I think this card will see play.
It's possible. I mean, you have the Viashino Sandstalkers of the world, which was sort of the first one that ever came out, and sort of showed that when you have a card that just returns to your hand every single turn, there's goods and there's bads in that, and that you have to continue to put 4 mana to make this thing happen. But you can also just you're hitting for 5 damage every single time. So if I'm taking 25% of your life total every time, that's worth a 4 mana investment every turn.
Well, and it's also, those are the turns where things, they're probably going to have to block it. Like, how many times, your opponent's going to play something to stabilize and you play this to just crack back? They might just have to block it. So it's not that clause might not even happen. At the same time, if it is a clause, we could have a devoid creature in play. The 3/2 that we'll get to shortly in red-black is very good, and I think very standard playable as well. And
well, if that's standard playable, I feel like this is standard playable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think both of them go together, like peanut butter and that other thing.
And that other weird peanut butter and pickles, right?
Yeah, peanut butter and pickles.
There you go. And you do have Calagon, or Colagon, who needs to see some standard play. I want that dragon to get in there.
Which one?
Well, the 5 mana one. That was
the 5 mana one, because the 6 not the 6 mana one.
No. 6 mana one was terrible, but the 5 mana one, man, is built to move, is priced to move, if you will.
Yeah.
And I feel like they tried to price this one. I don't know. I still have my doubts because the ability is such a drawback at times. But again, I feel like they wanted this to be constructed playable, and they've done the best they could to make it so.
Yeah.
So another card. Yeah, another card that has gotten a lot of chatter as to whether it is constructed playable is Fathom Feeder. It is a black-blue 1/1. It is a rare Eldrazi drone that has Devoid, Death Touch, Ingest, and, because it needs another ability, black, blue, and 3 colorless : draw a card. Each opponent exiles the top card of his or her library. Now, me personally, in my very limited experience, with a little pun there, in the pre-release last night, I got to play against this card, upon which I kept a removal spell waiting for it every single game, because this card is ridiculous and limited, incredibly powerful. It doesn't look that way really, but Death Touch is a very rare thing in this limited format, because they can take down an Eldrazi no matter how big it is, and that ability can slowly but surely destroy you, not only feeding your processors, but also just getting you card advantage time after time.
Yeah, I also think this card is very standard playable as well.
Is it now?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of removal for it. The Ingest could be relevant, but not really. There's not a lot of processors you want to play in standard. But it, Jamoka's Command is a really big removal spell right now. It's always going to trade. And the thing about this card is it has to trade, because once you get to 5, you're going to get starting to take extra cards. It also potentially works really well with Ojutai's Command later in the game. And so this card I actually do think is very standard playable, and we will see it see play, because it's always guaranteed to trade with something.
And that's certainly a big upside. I have my doubts because maybe it's going to take a while. Maybe it's going to take cons to leave, for example. This is a card that can shine when the right pieces are in place, and I don't know if they are right now.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I can see that. I just think it's a great 2-drop to play in a Esper Dragons deck. It's just there. It's going to trade with something. Sure, it'll die probably. The removal spell, they'll attack you, but it's just a 2-mana investment, and it can just win the game.
Yeah, slowly over time, it gets you all that advantage, and that's a very powerful thing. Forerunner of Slaughter, that you had mentioned earlier, is an uncommon Eldrazi drone. It is a black-red 3/2 with the Void, 1 colorless : target colorless creature gains haste until end turn. So for 3 mana, it is a 3/2 haste. Otherwise, it's kind of sitting out there waiting for you to cast any other colorless creature and then giving it haste as a result. So, yes, constructed playable?
Yeah, mostly because on turn 3, it's just a 3/2 haste on its own. So, before they really get anything on the board that's, devastating, you might be able to get a bunch of damage. And now, that's arguable, not that great because of Anna Fenn's Rhino decks, but a deck with black and red should be able to kill it with self-inflicting wounds and roasts and things of that nature. So I do feel like this card is going to see some good play.
Sure. I mean, and it was one of the first cards that was spoiled from the set, and to show you how crazy the Eldrazi are these days, and it's a pretty weird card. It's something that we've never really seen anything like before, and black-red aggro has just been this thing that it just kind of keeps getting close, but it never actually gets there, and it's every single time, at least so far traditionally, and I hope it can get there because it's always been teased, and it's oh, Dreadbore, man, it's going to put this thing over the top. We're going to have a black, red, blah, 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 and nope, we're not.
Nope.
They don't. So I have my doubts, but I would love to see it actually at the top tables. That would be fantastic. We're going to move on to Grove Rumbler, a red-green, 2-colorless 3/3. It is an uncommon elemental with trample and landfall. Gives it +2/+2 until end of turn. So this is your red-green aggro all-star. This is one of the premier uncommons in that archetype. And I think you see you kind of see a trend of all of the uncommons are amazing in the archetypes for which they're built.
Yeah, no, I mean, this card just is phenomenal. It's just a 3/3 for 4. Doesn't block that well, but it starts attacking for 5 every turn with trample.
Right.
I mean, it just wins games. I mean, I'm repeating what you're saying because that's what the card does.
Because that's what it does, dude.
Yeah. I don't know what else to say. It's going to win a lot of limited games because a 5/5 trample is really tough to deal with, and it's not getting blocked by any Scion tokens.
Right.
There's not a lot of trample in the set. Same reason why Wanderer is so good.
So, constructed, no?
Oh, all right. Next card.
Fine. I'm just asking questions, man.
I'll pie bet on that one.
No, I'm not. I don't like always losing. Grove Tender Druids is a green, white, and 2-colorless 3/3 elf druid ally. Whenever it or another ally enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1 colorless, and if you do, you put a 1/1 green plant creature token on the battlefield. So now the plants are angry. The plants are tougher than they used to be. However, you have to pay a mana to get them, and that makes this more or less a 5-drop. I don't think you ever want to be in a position where you play this on turn 4 or play this for 4 mana, to clarify, because you want to play this with the ability to make that extra plant.
Yeah, the only way you do it is if you really have like this super awesome curve and you don't want to off tempo yourself. Like just getting into play is going to be better. Like maybe playing one of those that gives +2/+2 or something like that. That's the only time. But yeah, this card works well on its own because it'll come into play with 4 power at 5 mana and 3 power with 4. And so that's great there. And then every other ally comes in with another 1/1. So I do like this card a ton.
Yeah, I mean, every ally becomes kicker 1, make a 1/1 plant, and that's sweet. It would kind of, you don't want it to make allies with its trigger, but I want it to make allies with its trigger. I just want to trigger ally, trigger rally, trigger rally, trigger rally. That'd be insane, but that would also be really degenerate, really broken, and awful. Yeah, that'd be just
kind of the way we thought that Kiora worked right away before you read it a second time. Yeah. She's like, does this just, once you fight, does it just
make infinite octopuses? No. Herald of Kozilek is a red, blue, and a colorless 2/4 with Devoid, and colorless spells you cast cost 1 colorless less to cast. How powerful is this card?
I think it's standard playable.
Wow.
I actually do. It's just mana acceleration. There's a lot of colorless spells, and there's colorless creatures, and there's morphs, and it's a Devoid, and I do. 2/4 is great stats for 3 mana.
Right.
For an ability to make things cost cheaper, you can start making things cost like 1 or 0 when you get multiples, and
sure.
I am a fan of this card. I don't know what to do with it yet, like many of the other cards in the format, but I do like it.
It seems like there's a lot of potential there. And if this is a card I feel could do absolutely nothing in Standard, or could be a hallmark of the format if it gets to that point.
But we'll never know.
Well, we won't know until the future gets here.
Yeah, until someone plays at the Pro Tour, and then we'll know.
I know. Well, no, and then 3 years from now, someone's going to go back and be like, "Lol, you guys didn't understand how insane Herald of Kozilek was." Well, it seems good. That's all we have now. Our seem goods.
Yep.
All right. Speaking of Kiora, we have Kiora, Master of the Depths, a blue, green, and 2 colorless 4 loyalty planeswalker. +1, you untap up to 1 target creature and up to 1 target land. -2, you reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You may put a creature and or a land card among them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard, which is important. And for -8, you get an emblem with whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may have it fight target creature. That's the end of the emblem. Yes. And then you put 3 8/8 blue octopus creature tokens on the battlefield. So you get that sweet emblem, and then you bring all your octopi, and they just crush all that is before you. But that's not really how planeswalkers are evaluated. Planeswalkers are evaluated by their first actual usable abilities, and this one seems really good, but not like, oh my god, Gideon, just like it's okay in the right shell, blah blah blah.
Well, yeah, Gideon kind of just like is his own man, right? He does his own thing. He wants to win the game on his own. He's always been that way. Whereas like this Kiora is a very synergistic, like Sultai-esque, going to work with Delve really well,
right.
Going to work with Deathmist and Den Protector, going to work with Jace. There's a lot of build around me. It even works really well with Hangerback, but Hangerback works with everything.
No, of course it does.
Works well with Jason, the untap on the first ability and the second ability. Works with Rattleclaw on the first ability. Like, there's a lot of synergy behind Kiora.
Right.
And so, like, building the Kiora decks are going to be difficult, and all you have to figure out all the, like, little tiny nuances about the deck. But, like, it's going to exist. I think this is much better than the other version of Kiora, mostly because she's got a Trident now. Right. You know, the whole storyline, stole the god's Trident. Now she powers the ocean and the creatures.
No, wait. And she stole a Bident.
Or a Bident. It's a Bident. I always forget about that.
2 points.
What's a Bident?
2 points, dude. That's what a Bident is. A Trident has
3 points.
Thank you.
And you made yours.
Oh, yeah. So good. Oh, I got it in there. This is the synergy Planeswalker for sure. This is when the deck that uses Kiora the best is finally found, she will be a fantastic card in it.
Yeah, and that's one of my cards to work list.
Right.
Haven't figured it out yet, but I do like it a lot.
Right, and as usual, in Limited, you always play your Planeswalkers if you can. They are incredibly good, no matter how not synergistic or even not obvious in terms of how good they are in your deck. They're still fantastic.
Well, yeah, this card allows you, like, whereas old Jace, that Jace Architect of Thought, sometimes you'd only get one card from the takedown. This card gives you the potential of 2. You can get, like, a land and the best creature out there. So that's really big.
Right.
And so the card advantage you get off Kiora, plus the Delve, counts as pseudo cards, right. Because you're able to cast your spells faster. Like, that's very powerful. Like, I've seen this card use all parts of the Buffalo by putting Deathmist Raptor in the graveyard, getting a Den Protector in hand, and a land, being able to more flip up, get the Deathmist back. Like, the card gets out of control really quickly.
Absolutely. So I'm excited to see her, do some really awesome things in Standard. We have March from the Tomb, which is next. A black, white, and 3 colorless rare sorcery. Return any number of target ally creature cards with total converted mana cost 8 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Now, this sounds like Patriarch's bidding, but it ain't. Because 8 converted mana cost is not a lot when it comes to the allies that we have. The allies that we have are not Hada Freeblade. We don't have the 1 mana, the 2 mana allies that are really great. We have the 4 or 5 mana allies, which are sweet. But at that point, you only have 2 or 3 converted mana costs left to kind of spend on the other allies you want to bring back.
Yeah, March from the Tomb is going to not be... It's going to be good in Limited, great in Limited in the Ally decks, because you're just... Any card advantage is good. But you're going to see this card do a lot more with the new set if they bring a ton of allies. Because the whole idea, I'm guessing, is that we're going to finally beat the Eldrazi. And to do that, we're going to need powerful allies converging and fighting all the Eldrazi. So next set, I think this card is going to be a lot more powerful along with all the other allies.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can definitely see how it kind of slots right into the black-white ally deck. This is a great card in Limited. But we'll see how much better it gets either in Limited and maybe even Constructed if they can give us some cheap allies that are powerful. Yep. All right, so we're going to move on here to Munda, Ambush Leader, Munda. So Munda's pissed. He's a red, white, and 2 colorless 3/4 haste core ally with Rally. Whenever it or another ally enters the battlefield under your control, you may look at the top 4 cards of your library. If you do, reveal any number of ally cards from among them, put those cards on top of your library in any order, and the rest on the bottom in any order. So had he put them in your hand, I think we would be a lot more excited about this guy. Putting them on top, yeah, he would be bananas. But on top, not quite as bananas.
No, so even if you played 0 other allies, this is limited playable. It's a 3/4 haste for 4.
Yep.
And the ability is great for keeping an ally deck going. Like, it's really difficult to get 17 ally creatures for a limited deck. But if you have 12 or 10, and you really got a decent ally deck, every time you draw this card, it's going to feel like you're just like, ally, get all these triggers, allies, get all these triggers. It's so awesome. I'm just doing all these awesome things.
Right.
And you get to, like, kind of set up the sweet goblin recruiter, like, all right, so I want to play this one into this one, and then you look at more, and you're like, all right, this one into this one, and you never flat out anymore. It's a fabulous Magic card for Limited. It's just going to win so many games.
And it's going to have that weird sort of interaction when you don't have a lot of allies, or maybe he's like you're only one for whatever weird reason, where you play him, and every time he's just like, well, I looked at 4 and those go in the bottom, and maybe you have one more ally, you looked at 4 and then they just go on the bottom. Okay.
Because you don't want to put the ally?
Well, no, because there's no allies. Like, when you don't find any allies, you're just looking at 4 and putting them on the bottom.
Oh, you don't have to. I mean, it's correct to do so you know what other outs you have from
Well,
your deck.
you may look at the top 4 cards.
Yeah.
If you do, you put those ally cards on top and the rest in the bottom. Okay, fine.
Yeah, but it's probably correct to do so then you know then you have a better idea of what you're drawing.
Sure. And next we have easily what I feel is the weirdest card. And we're talking a card that is in Battle for Zendikar with weird creatures. Noyandar Royal Shaper is the weirdest card. I still don't really understand it. It's a blue, white, and 3 colorless 4/4 legendary merfolk ally that whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may put 3+1/+1 counters on target land you control. If you do, that land becomes a 0/0 elemental creature with haste. That's still a land. I'm glad it gives it haste because there's none of that weird, well, you actually put counters on the land that you played this turn. But, I don't get why these triggers are happening, why it's happening the way it does, what a merfolk has to do with all of this, why it's a legendary merfolk. I mean, it's a bomb rare in limited.
Magic.
It's just stars and rainbows that are going to explain what in the world this guy is doing. I don't get it. Brad, I don't get it.
Oh, I have no idea.
I don't get it. I know it's good.
Cast a spell and then that land becomes anime. I don't know, man.
Why?
I don't know. Magic cards are weird sometimes.
Because magic cards are weird sometimes.
Yeah, it's an ally too, so that makes no sense.
Yeah. Why? Because it's a merfolk ally. Okay, there's other merfolk allies in the set, and that's a thing. But
but it has nothing to do with allies.
Yeah,
with abilities.
There's no rally or whatever, and I don't get that. I mean, this is just a strange card. It's great, it's super playable and limited. And if you are blue-white, for God's sakes, you should play this thing because it's amazing. But I don't get it. Flavor, I don't get it. Story, it's just strange.
No.
Moving on. We're going to take a look at Omnath, Locus of Rage. Omnath showed up back in Worldwake, I think it was. It might have been Zendikar. I think it was Worldwake. And it just kept adding mana to your mana pool. Or it didn't let mana leave your mana pool, as I recall.
Something, yeah.
But now Omnath's pissed. And he is the Locus of Rage. So for 2 green, 2 red, 3 colorless, 7 mana, you get a 5/5 legendary elemental. He is mythic with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you can put a 5/5 red-green elemental creature token on the battlefield. And whenever Omnath, Locus of Rage, or another elemental you control dies, Omnath deals 3 damage to target creature or player. When they're coming and they're going, it doesn't matter. He's going to do something great.
Yeah, and I just want a rules question for you. If you play a second Omnath, you get to deal 6 to a player, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's just awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. I mean, this is one of those cards that I think was built for the Commander crowd, guys. I think we already messed up in that their starting life total is 40 and their starting life total is not 30 when it came to Felidar Sovereign.
So is Felidar Sovereign even legal?
Yeah, I mean, the life totals change and creatures die, and it only happens at the beginning of their upkeep and whatever. But Omnath, Locus of Rage is just one of those cards that's like, build around me, get your red-green cards, do some really sweet, mana acceleration, play this as your commander. He's super sweet, and every landfall gets you all these creatures, and that's awesome.
Yeah, no, this card's really, really good. Limited bomb. People are starting to play it in Standard too, but I just feel like Dragon Lord Atarka is just better.
Yeah, it's just better. It wasn't meant to be, in my opinion, a standard playable card. It was just meant to be a fun, casual card, and in limited, when you're able to get to this mana cost, which I think you certainly can in red and green, this card is nuts.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, this card is super sweet. But if it shows up in standard, I'm pretty much just going to ask them why they didn't play Atarka.
That's because this is like the 7th or the 5th Atarka.
Exactly. Okay, if they're playing for Atarka, then it's okay. Mm-hmm. But if you're not playing the flying 8/8 Trampler that's easier to cast, we got to sit down and have a conversation. And Atarkavention, if you will.
Atarkavention, I like it.
It's nice, thank you. Resolute Blademaster is a red, white, and 3 colorless 2/2. So he's a 5-mana 2/2, which is a human soldier ally. So his effect better be pretty good. Well, his effect is Rally. Whenever he or another ally enters the battlefield on your control, creatures you control gain double strike. Okay.
Shocked that the Boros ally gave double strike.
What? It's amazing, though. This card is nuts.
It's very good.
This card will just win you games out of nowhere or win you games right in front of you. Not from nowhere, but right there. Because, man, this card is really good. They've been giving double strike so often to creatures. It's just like you get double strike and they don't care. And I think they finally learned that double strike is not that powerful. It's just like when they learned that they needed to juice the creatures in Magic and pull back the spells. I think they're also starting to learn that like double strike is good, but not like, oh my god,
oh yeah, it's not busted.
The world is ending. We can't handle creatures with double strike. And so you're starting to see cards like this, which just give it to everybody.
Yep. Every single ally gets double strike.
Card is super, super good. I love it a lot. Royal Spout is next. A white, blue, and a colorless sorcery that puts target creature on top of its owner's library. However, it awakens for 4 for a blue, white, and 4 colorless. So for 6 mana, you get a 4/4 out of it. And this card seems very, very strong.
Yeah, I mean, the card's great because it puts it on top, so it's a time walk effect. And especially with the Awaken in the late game, it could just end the game where it's like, pounce your thing. I know that you're drawing it, so the game's not gonna you're not gonna draw something crazy, right. And this 4/4 is gonna win the game. So I think like the 7 mana Royal Spout is game ending, and the 3 mana is just when you're trying to get a tempo advantage.
6 mana Awaken.
Well, 7 mana is in you want that creature to attack that in turn.
Fair enough. Fine. Could this see any constructed play?
Probably not. I think Jeskai Charm is just a little bit too good, much better. Like maybe later, but if you're looking for cards to interact with blue-white decks, I think Jeskai Charm is just better.
There you go. So, Sire of Stagnation is next. One of the last mythics that was unveiled. It is a black, blue, and 4 colorless 5/7. It is a monster. It is a mythic Eldrazi with Devoid. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, that player exiles the top 2 cards of their library, and you draw 2 cards. It is a Consecrated Sphinx that isn't quite as consecrated or sphinxy, but it is a very strong, scary-looking dude.
Yeah, great and limited. Don't think it's going to see standard play.
Yeah.
It's just a good limited card. If you get it down on turn 6 and your opponent doesn't get to play any more lands, or you get to draw cards, like the game is just over at that point.
Right.
If they can't kill it on the spot. But it's... People have been saying, like, is this standard playable? I mean, it's a big 5/7 for 6, but, like, we're in the era of dragons right now. Like, we got to get through Cons Block before we even consider cards like this for standard right now.
Yeah, I mean, and even even Dragons of Tarkir. I mean, you know, we're talking like you have Dragon Lord Silumgar, who is the same casting cost but has control magic attached. So one of these effects is a little bit better than the other.
Yeah, and even the other Silumgar can't be killed, you know, so like that's even a better thing.
Yeah, which is the Drifting Death, and he's you know what's going to happen is Cons and Dragons and Cons and Fate Reforged are going to rotate, and Dragons is still going to be with us. So you know, I'm trying to think of a world where it's just Dragons of Tarkir, and this card still is outclassed.
No, they'll print something better. This is just a very good commander card.
Oh my God, you said it. Dude,
it is pretty good in Commander, though.
It is pretty good in Commander.
They have to, the first person has to kill it, or they can't play land. They're like, just draw your 2 cards. You're just going to draw so many cards.
Yeah, you're going to draw now. I mean, like, this is the problem with a card like this, is that you give your opponent the ability to control it.
Yeah.
When your opponent can control your abilities, it turns out they're probably not going to do so in your favor.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, then they don't get to play lands, and they can't, like, try to deck you because you have to exile every time you trigger it.
Sure.
So it's actually pretty fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's good, and it's a fantastic mythic, and it should be good because it is mythic, but it's not, like, overpowering, and ultimately it gives your opponents that type of control, which can be pretty scary.
Yep.
So we're going to move on to Skyrider Elf. Skyrider Elf is what Gaia's Skyfolk wanted to be, but is now bigger, scarier, and grown up. It's a blue-green X/0/0 flyer with Converge, which gets a +1/+1 counter for each color of mana spent to cast it. So it could go all the way up to a 5-mana 5/5, or you could just play it for a green and a blue, and it's still a 2/2 flyer. And this card is amazing in limited as long as you can cast it.
Yeah, as long as you're blue-green. I mean, that's the downside. What's the one that had the Sunburst?
Skyreach Manta.
Yeah, Skyreach Manta. This is like the blue-green version of Skyreach Manta, where it's all upside unless you weren't in green and blue.
Sure.
But this card is phenomenal. I don't know what else to say about it. Like, it's so good. It's so good. It's so good in limited. And it's going to be so good in standard if there's a deck for it. I just really do think that just a 2/2 flyer for 2 is a playable card, especially in blue-green when we're looking at like a lot of different like bounce effects and tap effects, and there's some really cool green and blue cards that might not be able to get there while Rhino's still around.
Sure.
But I do think this card will see standard play.
Yeah, and I mean, Rhino won't be around forever. And if Woodland Bellower has its own deck, I think Skyrider Elf is going to be in that deck.
Yes, fair.
Yeah, I mean, just think of, a 3-mana 3/3 flyer. Like, that is an amazing card. A 4-mana 4/4 flyer. That is an amazing card. And so it goes right up the chain, which is fantastic.
Well, it also works really well with Hardened Skills.
Yeah.
It's just a turn 2 4/4.
Ooh, that is nuts.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll take it. Thank you very much. Ulamog's Nullifier is a black, blue, and 2 colorless 2/3 devoid, flash, flyer. When it enters the battlefield, you may put 2 cards your opponents own from exile into their owner's graveyards, and if you do, counter target spell. This is one of the wordiest, most complex cards I've seen in years.
Yes, it is, and it's also then when I heard of it, I thought it was a rare.
Yeah.
And then when I saw it, I'm like, oh, it's only uncommon. I'm like, wait, it's not even that good. Like this is one way to make a Mystic Snake look bad.
I mean, it is, and there's a lot of hoops, but like the fact that there are so many hoops, there are so many words, like it's just, I can't believe it's not rare.
I agree. It is a very unique uncommon. It's very good.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those that, like, if you're black-blue, you're absolutely 100% playing this card. This card is very, very strong.
Yeah, even if you don't counter, it's still like a tricky flash flyer.
Yeah, exactly, which is great. And if you can counter, it's nuts. It's the Mystic Snake you always wanted. So it's just a very complex card in a world where there's this new world order and they're worried about how many words are on a card. Like, this card just shatters all that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's awesome. It's one of the cards in the set that I really want to play with because it just is going to feel so good to counter their thing.
Yes, it really is. This card is very strong, and I can't wait to pick it early and play it always. Last multicolor card is Veteran Warleader. This was in the Zendikar versus Eldrazi duel deck. It's a green, white, and a colorless star human soldier ally. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures you control. And now you get to the good part, which is tap another untapped ally you control. Veteran Warleader gains your choice of first strike, vigilance, or trample until end of turn.
So is that a first pick? I feel like it might be a first pick.
Seems first pickable to me.
Yeah, it seems very, very good.
Seems like I want to look for the word ally in every card in every pack thereafter, and then I'm going to pick them and I'm going to play them, and this guy is going to be Bazonkerstains.
Yeah, this card's wonderful. I love it to death. And it just seems absolutely unbeatable with other allies because it's just you build a big board and you just kill them with this, protect the queen strategy of just getting Warleader as big as possible. It can gain first strike, it can gain trample, it can attack and block with a bunch of allies, and it doesn't really take that much to trigger it. So I feel like this card is just going to win so many games of Limited.
Absolutely. Now, Scion of the Wild was a card that went from rare to uncommon to common, and it was still bad. But when you add into the fact that this is triggering all of your rally triggers, and it's able to use your allies in ways that can make it shine, that's what makes this card incredibly powerful.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, this card is super good, and this set review is going pretty well. We are now through all the green cards, all of the multicolor cards. This one took an hour and a half, so thank you guys for sticking through all of these cards because there are a lot of them, and I want to thank you, Brad, for doing the same.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, buddy. So for Evan Irwin,
Brad Nelson,
we tapped all the cards.
So you didn't have to.
Bye.
See you guys for all the others.
Yay!